Hi, everyone. It's Kirsten Hagland here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Weekly Hope. We're so glad that you could join us, and sorry about the late start for today, but as you know, we are working with the internet, and sometimes things work great, and sometimes they don't go exactly as perfectly as we would like. And that's just life, accepting the imperfect in whatever way, shape, or form that it comes. So we're all about going along with the flow here at Eating Disorder Hope. So thank you so much for joining us. If you're here for the first time, I want to say welcome to you and explain a little bit of what the show is about. So we're here every Wednesday, usually around 12 p.m. Eastern, and we invite clinicians, authors, advocates, speakers, just people from across the spectrum of the mental health and eating disorder recovery field to come on and talk about different issues. And I interview our guests and we cover just a bunch of different topics, and we're always open to your suggestions for topics as well. So that is just a little shout out to say, if there's something that you want to hear more about and you have suggestions, you can send us a direct message. You can let us know in the comments below, just whatever's on your mind and heart. We want to hear about it. And we want to provide topics and conversations that are interesting and applicable to your life and your recovery journey. So that's what we do. Also, we just invite you to get engaged and to ask questions and be involved. Obviously, we're here on Facebook Live and we have a comment section. We have the ability for you to share your story and use your voice. So I want to invite you to at any time say hello, say your name, tell us where you're signing in from. The cool thing is we do get people who watch these interviews from all over the world. We've had people from South Africa, from Ireland, from Nepal, from India, from Egypt, obviously the United States and Canada, here in Europe, just people from all over sign in and say hello. So always let us know where you're joining us from in the world. And it's really just cool to know that there is a global recovery community out there. And I think it also helps people to know that wherever they are in this process, they're not alone. So just want to encourage your participation throughout this, and always just makes for a really great conversation. Also want to just intro and this topic a little bit before I bring on our guests. So we have the Director of Nutrition from the Meadows Ranch in Arizona joining us today to talk about a really, really important topic. And that is vegetarianism, veganism, and other lifestyle choices and how those weave into eating disorder recovery. And it's something that a lot of people are very, very passionate about, and there's a lot of strong opinions. So I wanted to bring on an expert in this field in nutrition and obviously to be able to talk about this, because it can be really sensitive, but I think we need to open the door and talk about things that are more difficult, more sensitive, and really shine light and shed the truth on, and always be asking ourselves, why am I doing this? What is this? What is my motivation for this? And how do I incorporate my ethics and my values into my recovery journey in a healthy, sustainable way? So with that, I'm going to, we've already got people. Amy says hello from New Hampshire. Hey there. Gina says hi from Southwest Florida. Hey, Gina. Great to have you guys here. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring our guest onto the other side of the screen. There is Kim Collins. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
Hey, so I'm going to read a little bit about your bio so everyone knows who you are. So as I mentioned, Kim is the Director of Nutrition at the Meadows Ranch, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the Meadows. But she's a registered dietitian and a nutritionist with specialized training as a certified eating disorder registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator. And she's got over 10 years of experience in the field of eating disorders. Prior to working at the Meadows Ranch, Kimberly was the lead dietitian of the adolescent unit at Rosewood Center for Eating Disorders and has extensive experience working with both adolescent and adult populations across all levels of care. She's a guest presenter at multiple different conferences, including at the IADEP, which is the International Association for Eating Disorders Professionals Conference. Also a guest presenter at the Cape Cod Symposium for Addictive Disorders, and she's provided over numerous continuing education webinars. So she is really an expert in this, and we can't wait to hear what she has got to give us. She's going to break it down. But Kim, first of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Meadows Ranch and what you do there?
Sure, absolutely. The Meadows Ranch is an eating disorder program that contains all inpatient, residential, and PHP levels of care for adults and adolescents. It's an all-female program, but it's wonderful since we can incorporate all levels of care. We've got all sorts of different experiences that patients can be engaged in while having the support while dealing with their eating disorders. So we're doing different experientials, like restaurant experientials, going off campus, having more real life situations while they're at the PHP level, going to the movies and getting a snack, that type of thing, trying to get them stepped down to being able to go home and live their lives with their family in recovery.
Really cool. Wonderful. So let's dive into our topic here. First of all, if people don't know, can you explain the difference between a vegetarian and a vegan?
Sure, absolutely. Somebody who chooses to follow a vegetarian diet or a vegetarian is somebody that's choosing to not eat specific animal proteins or fish, shellfish, dairy, or eggs. There's a lot of different kinds of vegetarian diets. So just to break it down a little bit, because I know it can sound a little confusing when you're reading or hearing about it. If somebody is an ovo vegetarian, that's OVO, ovo, that's going to be somebody who does not eat animal proteins but is willing to eat eggs. If somebody's lacto vegetarian, it's somebody who's not going to eat animal proteins, but they are willing to eat dairy products. That one can kind of be a little bit easier to remember if you think of lactose as in what's in dairy. Another one's going to be pesco vegetarian, and that's going to be somebody who eats fish but not other animal proteins. Then there's going to be any combination of those. So lacto-ovo is going to be somebody who will eat dairy and eggs but not animal proteins, and so on and so forth. So a lot of different variations for a vegetarian diet. Somebody who's following a vegan diet is going to be somebody who does not eat animal proteins at all, and that's going to include animal proteins that are in products. So this is where it can get a little bit tricky for people. So that means they're not going to be eating anything that contains eggs or contains dairy products. It can go to the extent that they're not going to eat anything that contains gelatin or honey or anything that came from a source of an animal. So in the eating disorder world, that's where it can start to get very limiting.
Yeah, and I am interested to hear your perspective on the restriction element of everything. And so what are some reasons that someone would choose, outside of any disordered eating behaviors? Because obviously a lot of people choose these lifestyles that have no eating disorder at all. What are some reasons that you see that people choose a vegetarian or a vegan lifestyle?
Definitely. Everybody has their own reason for choosing the different foods they are willing and not willing to eat. A lot of the common ones that we hear is compassion for animals. I love animals. I don't want to be eating them. More so these days, as I saw a Netflix video on X, Y, and Z, and I just don't want to eat those foods right now. We'll often hear about moral, ethical decisions or religious reasons. One of the more common ones we're hearing a little bit more often, but we know is out there, so it's kind of nice to hear more often, is that they're doing it to improve their health, which is often, if you ask enough questions, links back to wanting to lose weight or the goal of weight loss.
Do you hear, I'm just curious, do you hear, because we hear increasing talk about climate change, and obviously the younger generation is very, very concerned about sustainability and taking care of the environment. Is that reason starting to come up a little bit more, that, concern about their carbon footprint?
It is. It's not as common as I would think it is right now, but I imagine it's going to be growing. But yes, that is something that we're hearing more and more often, just wanting to make sure that, they're doing what they can for the environment and to preserve everything for future generations.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so now that we've broken down a little bit about what exactly is this, let's talk about how this works within the flow of disordered eating, the onset of an eating disorder, and then the recovery process. So I know a lot of people who are very, very passionate about the fact that they have chosen to be vegetarian or vegan for ethical reasons. It has, in their view, nothing to do with disordered eating. And it's really frustrating when the eating disorder community says, that's just a mask for an eating disorder and blah, 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 and tries to pin it, when it's not at all.
Absolutely.
At the same time, there have been articles and people that have come out on the other side and said, you know what, the whole time I was saying I was vegan, it was really just a mask for my eating disorder. So you hear people very passionate on both sides. And I want to know from you, what questions should people ask themselves about choosing this lifestyle that can maybe help them identify why they have really chosen this lifestyle?
Absolutely. As you said, people more and more and more are realizing that eating vegetarian, vegan is related to their eating disorder. And that's not something that they often recognize at the beginning or while they're in the depth of their eating disorder. At the same time, we absolutely want to respect everybody's personal beliefs and know that just because somebody's eating vegetarian, it doesn't mean they have an eating disorder. So trying to figure out which came first or which is very true for that particular person. So different things that we're going to look at is or question that patient on. Is there personal individual beliefs on why they're eating in the way that they are? Then definitely the origination of eating vegan or vegetarian. Did they start eating that way before the eating disorder? Did they start eating that way as a young child before they even were completely aware of food and weight and body image and all that good stuff? Or is this something that kind of progressed after their eating disorder started for them, after they started being concerned with those other body image type issues? Or is it something that they went to after maybe treatment for their eating disorder, but they weren't completely in recovery yet? So maybe it's linked to some eating disorder or disordered eating thoughts as well. I think the primary thing is to making sure that we know the motivation behind it. Like we said before, everybody has their personal reasons, but more and more often people are saying that they want to eat a vegetarian diet to lose weight, which obviously can be really linked to disordered eating or eating disorder. I actually have a patient right now or not right now, she's gone, but I've had a patient who would choose to eat vegetarian at home, but she knew that she could eat animal proteins when she wasn't at home. So her personal preference was to eat vegetarian, but she also knew if she was going to be out in a social setting and didn't have that option, she could eat the food that was there so she could follow her meal plan, not restrict, remain in recovery. And as time went on, she found that she was starting to struggle with eating those animal proteins away from the house again. And as she thought about that, she realized that those eating disorder thoughts were getting louder and louder, and that maybe she needed to check back in with her therapist, just because it sounded like to her, or it felt like that eating disorder was kind of sneaking back in for her.
That's so interesting. And I loved how you told that story and mentioned that it was motivation for her to connect back with her treatment team to Absolutely. Say, that when you do hear that voice, because in the recovery process post-treatment, it can still be challenging. And so that openness to say, hey, I need to check back in with my treatment team, super important. I'm curious about, we hear more and more about orthorexia, which I know is not in the DSM-5 as an official eating disorder, so to speak. But for those people who don't know what orthorexia is, can you explain a little bit about what that is and how, and I'm just curious as a person, it seems to me like some of these obsessions with food quality and food purity and all this can kind of also be another side of the orthorexia discussion.
Absolutely. Orthorexia is the desire to eat healthy, and it ends up going to the extreme that somebody is limiting just about everything that they're going to eat. They're not going to eat products if they're not organic. They're not going to eat products if they contain certain nutrients. And it gets to the point that they're very, very, very limited on the food that they're willing to eat, to the extent that they usually can't eat away from home. And that obviously is going to lead into disordered eating disorders in the long run. With that, people with orthorexia are often reading as many studies as they possibly can on just the overall health and nutrients of the contents of our food. And with that, it can get really, really confusing because there's so many different studies. That's the awesome thing with nutrition. It's great because there's always new studies and always new stuff out there, but it can get super confusing because there's always new stuff and always new studies out there. So just really being aware of what you're looking at and making sure that it's a good population that the study was looking at and it's a valid study.
Yeah. It is so hard because we have such an overload of information now with Google and obviously the internet. You can find any information, data, statistics you want at the click of a button, but it can be so incredibly overwhelming. And how do you guide your clients through the recovery process if they've chosen to be vegetarian or vegan? And let's say it is really, really based on an internal ethical desire to protect the environment or to show compassion for animals, et cetera. how do you guide someone through that process, respecting their values, but helping them to discover this all foods fit mentality that must come along with recovery?
Absolutely. So when it's truly a vegetarian or vegan due to their personal beliefs, like I said before, we absolutely want to respect that. With that, we're really wanting to do education with that person around how to get all the nutrients that their body needs. Um, the part of being vegetarian or vegan that can be difficult is getting all of the protein sources that we need.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sorry, my phone's ringing in the background.
you're fine, no worries. So
It's a
eating
pretty
a vegetarian or vegan diet, you often need to eat 2 to 3 times the amount of plant-based foods as somebody eating an animal protein. So just doing lots of education around how to place different foods together to make sure you're getting those essential amino acids, being aware of the volume that it's going to take, because oftentimes people are going to be more full because the volume is a lot more. And then talking through different situations on how to eat away from home, how to be prepared if they're going to a social event, to make sure that there's going to be choices there. Because let's face it, when you're in recovery, if there's not something that you're willing to eat, if you're vegan or vegetarian, then it can be easy to restrict that food. The minute you restrict something, it's super easy to keep restricting, and we just don't want that cycle to come back up or continue. So lots of problem solving and thinking ahead.
Yeah, that's really smart. And like you said, yeah, thinking ahead, it just takes a lot of planning. And you have to take a lot of personal responsibility for your recovery. And in that way, it can be a really good thing because you have to make sure, I mean, it's just that extra emphasis. Like I have to make sure that I'm taking responsibility, planning ahead, all of that. And maybe it forces you to think through those things where maybe someone who is not necessarily vegetarian or vegan might not be the kind of person who would prepare as much for those kinds of situations. Really, really interesting. So what advice do you have for people if they're watching this and they are a vegan or a vegetarian and they're in the recovery process right now? And let's say maybe they are working with people on their treatment team or their friend group who don't understand their position, or they're really struggling to try to share with people that this is really something that they ethically believe in and morally do. What advice would you give them? What strategies should they use in talking to other people?
Sure. I think the basis of everything is going to be education. So teaching their friends, teaching their family members that while, yes, I choose to eat in this way, I can do it healthy and I can give my body the nutrients that it needs. And this is how I do it. I'm working with my dietitian. I'm working with my therapist. I'm making sure that my body is healthy while I'm respecting my personal beliefs. So just doing, a lot of teaching around the fact that I'm aware that it's potentially eating disorder, but for me, I truly believe it's not, and this is why, and this is how I'm helping prevent that from happening and giving my body what it needs.
So cool. Yeah, you really have to be your own advocate, don't you?
Definitely.
Yeah. What are some other, and I would never call I know that some people do. Some people go vegetarian or vegan to lose weight, as you mentioned, which is not the right reason to do it. But so they're not, I wouldn't call them diets, and I'm sure you as a dietitian wouldn't either. But there are always kind of, obviously veganism and vegetarianism is trending now, is becoming more popular. What are some other lifestyle trends or diets that have become popular in the last year or years that you as a dietitian say, it's a no-go, unlike vegetarian or veganism, this is a no-go, this is a fad, don't even go there. Are there any that you can think of or that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to link back to the vegan vegetarianism, going vegan was actually the biggest food trend in 2018. So that's obviously something on the rise. But other ones that are just out there all over the place that we're hearing about is going keto, intermittent fasting, gluten-free is just huge still. Clean eating, which links back to the orthorexia, and more now I'm hearing more about juice cleanses. So all of these different things are out there, and they're things that we have to be super, super careful with, just because they can link and back to personal medical issues. So wanting to make sure that you're checking in with a physician, a dietitian, somebody before starting one of these different fads per se, just to make sure that you are keeping yourself safe and healthy.
Yeah. And I think keto, I know, was in a study helping people with epilepsy, or something like that, and which is great and things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that its benefits can extrapolate to the entire population. Similar, I have a couple girlfriends who have been severely gluten intolerant, and one who was diagnosed celiac. And it has been so frustrating for them to see gluten-free become like a weight loss trend, because then all these companies start marketing their products as gluten-free, and they're not necessarily, or they might be created in a factory where there are a bunch of other gluten products. So for someone who it's like can be
celiac, that can be an issue.
Yeah, huge issue. So yeah, I think it's so important that you emphasize that just someone needs to talk to a dietitian or their therapist and really see if this is the healthiest thing for them, right?
Definitely.
So last question for you, Kim, and this is one I ask every single one of our guests, and that's like, if someone is watching right now and they are in a really dark place in their recovery journey, what would you say to encourage them?
Definitely. If somebody is out there and struggling with those eating behaviors, if it's taken over your life, if all you're thinking about all day is food, weight, body image, what you can and can't eat, and those thoughts just start spiraling, reach out for help. Other examples are, skipping social engagements. I've had patients that plan fake meetings so they can go into work late so they can engage in behaviors. If you're not, hanging out with friends, or if it's starting to affect relationships, reach out to somebody that you trust and get help. Find a therapist to talk to, check in with your physician to make sure you're physically healthy or to help deal with any physical things that are going on. Find a dietitian that can help talk about those eating struggles and understand what you're going through. Because as much as our friends and family want to be able to help, lots of times they just honestly don't understand. So finding somebody who does is going to be key. It takes a really strong person to ask for help. So advocate for yourself and reach out.
So good. Thank you so much, Kim. And also, I just want to, a great comment came in while you were speaking, and I'd love to share it. And it's great. It's from Amy. She says, thank you for having this discussion. As someone who's been to multiple treatment centers, it's frustrating to hear mixed messages between ed professionals. Some centers completely refuse to accommodate vegan diets, which we just heard the Meadows does not do that. I feel it keeps people from going to treatment. The truth is, a vegan cupcake or a non-vegan cupcake a lot of times are equivalent in calories. A vegan cupcake would feel just as challenging as a non-vegan cupcake. That's a really, really great point, Amy. Thank you for sharing that. And you're so right. And Adriana says she's joining from Iceland. Hey, Adriana, so great to see you. Thanks for being here. And that just leads me to Kim, to Amy's question. You said that at the Meadows there that you try to really hard to respect everyone's food journey and everything like that. Is that something that you can corroborate, that it can, like, it doesn't matter if you're vegetarian or vegan, you still have the same fear foods, the same challenges with foods. Like, it's, even if they're vegan or vegetarian, it doesn't make them perfect foods.
Absolutely. And just to clarify, here at the Meadows Ranch, we honestly can't accommodate a vegan diet, but we will work with anybody to expand expand what they're eating to eat a vegetarian diet. And with that, we'll work with them on, just needing to give your body what it needs at this point in time in recovery. And if you choose to go back to eating a vegan diet, let's work with your outpatient dietitian to be able to do that. Unfortunately, the way our program is set up, we're not able to accommodate it. And we want to respect where people are coming from. So we do whatever we can to try to help people be able to follow a vegetarian diet and then go back to their personal beliefs if they choose to after the end of our treatment.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. And I apologize for misrepresenting it. But I think it's really cool because it's saying, like, it's not that we don't respect this. We really do. And we want to help as much as possible by, helping you to keep a vegetarian diet, but also setting you up for success when you go home. So really, really cool. Well, thank you so much. This is so cool. And again, thank you so much for providing your insight into this delicate issue, but it was very, very helpful. Thank you so much, Kim, for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We'll say goodbye to Kim, and just want to say thank all of you for watching and for being a part of this conversation. Like I said, I know that this is sensitive, but I really, really want to thank you for hanging in there with us, and want to emphasize that this video is going to stay on our Facebook page for the rest of the week. It's going to be pinned to the top, and then it'll be on our videos page on Facebook. It's also going to be on our YouTube channel. Eating Disorder Hope has a YouTube channel where you can see this episode as well as all of our past episodes of Weekly Hope there. So if this is something that you think might be helpful or beneficial to a loved one or someone that you might know that is dealing with these things and questioning these things, that you can send them the link to our YouTube channel and you can share this video. We're here for you, and we just want to share these resources and help as many people as we possibly can. So feel free to share. And of course, to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the notifications button so you can get an update whenever we upload a new video. So thank you, all of you, wherever you are in the world. Have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day and week. And we'll see you back here next Wednesday. Actually, we have another episode of Weekly Hope. We're going to be talking about food and feelings at the table, how we deal with that. So feel free to join us then, and keep an update on our social pages to find out more information about date, time, and guests on all that. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you next week for another episode of Weekly Hope.